The community center was exactly what it appeared to be: plain walls, folding chairs, soft string lights, and flowers borrowed from the grocery store down the street. To anyone else, it probably looked modest, maybe even cheap. To me, it felt right. Honest. Real. "I still can't believe she's doing this," my father, Richard, muttered to my mother, Elaine, as they settled into the front row. His voice was louder than he realized, and a few guests turned their heads. A community center wedding. What are people going to think? Elaine shifted uncomfortably in her seat and smoothed her dress. "We offered to help," she whispered back. "A proper venue. The country club. Even the hotel downtown. I had offered too. More than once. But this was the place I wanted." From the small side room, I watched through the cracked door with my fiancé, Noah, standing beside me. 43 guests filled the chairs, quietly talking while they waited. Noah squeezed my hand. "Are you sure you don't want to tell them?" he asked softly. "About your real position?" "About everything." I shook my head and adjusted my simple white dress in the mirror. "They made their choice 5 years ago," I said. "When they cut me off. When they said I embarrassed the family." "You didn't embarrass anyone," Noah said firmly. "They think I did," I replied. "They want me to feel small so they can feel successful." From the hallway, I heard my brother Ethan speaking to his wife, Claire. "I'm shocked she even invited us," Ethan scoffed. "What's she trying to prove with this budget wedding?" "Maybe she's ready to admit she failed," Claire replied. "Maybe she wants back into the family business." I nearly laughed. If only they knew. 5 years earlier, I had graduated with a degree in social work. Instead of celebrating, my family panicked. Richard owned 3 insurance agencies. Ethan was a lawyer. My sister Natalie was a corporate executive. They couldn't understand why I chose to work with at-risk youth for little pay instead of joining the family empire. "You're wasting your education," my father had said. "You're embarrassing us," my mother had added. That was the day they stopped listening. And that was the day I started proving them wrong. When I accepted a job at a residential facility for at-risk youth instead of the sales position my father had arranged at his insurance company, the reaction from my family was immediate and brutal. Calls went unanswered. Messages were ignored. Invitations stopped coming. "She's just going through a phase," my mother, Elaine, told her friends, I later learned. "She'll come back once she realizes helping people doesn't pay the bills." But I never came back. The facility was understaffed and underfunded, filled with teenagers most people had already given up on. Kids with criminal records, trauma, addiction, and anger they didn't know how to control. Many had been in and out of institutions their entire lives. I worked 12-hour days. Sometimes longer. I stayed late when a kid had a breakdown. I came in on weekends when someone relapsed or ran away. I studied at night, earning extra certifications while most people my age were climbing corporate ladders or attending networking events. Progress was slow. Painfully slow. But it was real. One boy who had been arrested 6 times before turning 16 finally stayed out of trouble for a full year. A girl who barely spoke above a whisper began leading group discussions. These weren't stories that impressed dinner party guests, but they mattered. Somewhere along the way, people started noticing. Supervisors began assigning me the most difficult cases. When programs failed, I was asked to step in. When a child was labeled unreachable, my name came up. Back in the side room of the community center, Noah glanced toward the main hall. Your dad just said he's surprised you could afford a wedding cake. I exhaled slowly. He thinks I'm barely surviving. In his mind, a social worker couldn't possibly build a life, let alone a future. What he didn't know, what none of them knew, was that 2 years earlier, the governor's office had started looking for someone to lead a new statewide initiative focused on youth rehabilitation. They needed someone with real field experience, advanced credentials, and proven results. My name kept coming up. The position came with a major salary increase, a staff of 40, and direct access to state and federal funding. Within 18 months, our programs reduced youth recidivism by 37% statewide. The success caught national attention. But my family never asked about my work. So they never knew how wrong they were. The new role changed everything, but not in the way my family imagined success was supposed to look. Becoming the director of the statewide Youth Rehabilitation Initiative wasn't glamorous. There were no corner offices or flashy titles to brag about at dinner parties. Instead, there were long strategy meetings, emergency calls at midnight, and constant pressure to prove that compassion-driven programs could actually work. I managed a team of 40 professionals, caseworkers, psychologists, educators, and outreach coordinators. Together, we rebuilt programs from the ground up. We focused on prevention instead of punishment, mentorship instead of incarceration, opportunity instead of shame. Within a year and a half, the numbers spoke for themselves. Youth recidivism dropped by 37% across the state. Facilities that had once been revolving doors became pathways forward. That's when the national attention started. 6 months ago, I was invited to Washington to consult on federal youth policy. 3 months after that, I was asked to join a presidential task force on juvenile justice reform. Last month, the president personally called to thank me for my contributions and invited me to speak at a national conference. Every time my phone rang with a new opportunity, I thought about calling my parents. And every time, I remembered how they had stopped answering. Back at the community center, the wedding music softened as guests settled into their seats. From the side room, I could see my family in the front row. My father sat stiffly, scanning the modest decorations, like he was counting everything that didn't meet his standards. My mother whispered something to my sister Natalie, who nodded politely, but clearly didn't understand why I'd chosen this place. They saw folding chairs. I saw beginnings. This is where everything started, I whispered to Noah, watching the room fill with quiet anticipation. He smiled. One day they'll understand. Maybe, I said. Or maybe this isn't for them. Just then, my phone buzzed in my hand. I frowned. Who texts someone minutes before their wedding? The message stopped my breath. I'm so sorry, I'm running late. Air Force One was delayed. We just landed. I'll be there in 10 minutes. Please don't start without me. Governor Margaret Hale. My heart began to race. She had said she'd try to come if her schedule allowed, but I never truly expected it. Over the past 2 years, she'd become more than my boss. She was a mentor, someone who believed in my work even when my own family didn't. When I told her my father refused to walk me down the aisle because he was embarrassed by my career, she hadn't hesitated. If your family won't stand with you, she'd said gently, then I will. I stared at the screen, realizing that everything was about to change. Whether my family was ready or not. I stared at my phone, my heart pounding so loudly I was sure Hannah, my matron of honor, could hear it. What's wrong? She asked, studying my face. You look like you've seen a ghost. I swallowed. The governor is coming. Hannah blinked. What governor? Governor Margaret Hale, I whispered. She's going to walk me down the aisle. Her eyes widened. The governor of the entire state. Before I could answer, a sudden commotion rippled through the building. The low murmur of conversation in the ceremony room fell silent. Through the small window, I saw movement outside, black SUVs pulling into the parking lot, doors opening in perfect coordination. Men in dark suits stepped out, speaking quietly into earpieces, scanning the area with sharp, practiced focus. Inside the community center, confusion spread. "What's going on?" someone whispered. "Is there an emergency?" another voice asked. From the front row, my father's voice carried into the hallway. "What's happening out there?" I smoothed my dress, took a deep breath, and checked my reflection one last time. "I guess," I murmured, "we're about to find out." The front doors opened. Governor Margaret Hale stepped inside, flanked by 2 security agents. She wore a tailored navy suit and a calm, confident smile that instantly commanded the room. "Sorry I'm late, kiddo," she said warmly, her voice carrying easily across the space. Air Force One was delayed, and traffic didn't help. The silence was absolute. Every guest turned to stare. My mother froze mid-breath. My father's mouth slowly fell open. My brother Ethan dropped his wedding program onto the floor without noticing. I stepped forward, my hands trembling. "Governor Hale, thank you so much for coming." She pulled me into a gentle hug. "I wouldn't miss this for the world. I'm incredibly proud of you." "Proud," my father echoed faintly. The governor turned toward my family, her expression polite but composed. "You must be her parents." "I'm Margaret Hale." The governor," my mother stammered. "That's right," she replied kindly. "I've had the privilege of working closely with your daughter for the past 2 years." My father frowned, clearly confused. "But she works in social services." Governor Hale raised an eyebrow slightly. "She directs our statewide youth rehabilitation initiatives and reports directly to me." The room seemed to tilt. Ethan's voice was barely a whisper. "Director?" "Yes," the governor continued calmly. "Her work has been so effective that she now advises federal leadership on juvenile justice reform." I watched realization slowly spread across my family's faces. And for the first time in 5 years, they were finally seeing me. The silence in the community center felt heavy, almost suffocating. No one spoke. No one even seemed to breathe. Governor Margaret Hale turned fully toward my family, her posture calm but authoritative. "Your daughter's work has transformed how this state approaches youth rehabilitation," she said evenly. "Under her leadership, recidivism rates dropped by 37% statewide in less than 2 years." My mother stared at me like she was seeing a stranger. 37%, she whispered. "Yes," the governor replied. "And that success didn't go unnoticed." She paused, letting the words sink in. 6 months ago, she was invited to Washington to consult on federal youth policy. 3 months ago, she joined a presidential task force on juvenile justice reform. And last month, the president personally called her to thank her for her contributions. A sharp breath escaped my sister Natalie. "The president called you?" I nodded gently. "Yes." My father looked like the ground had shifted beneath him. "But you never told us." Governor Hale's gaze softened slightly, but her voice remained firm. "Perhaps she would have, if anyone had asked." The words landed hard. For a moment, no one spoke. Then my mother shook her head slowly. We thought she was wasting her potential." "I was using it," I said quietly. "Just not in the way you expected." My brother Ethan finally looked at me, really looked at me. All this time, he said slowly, we thought you were barely getting by. I almost smiled. I was busy building something. Governor Hale turned back to me, her tone warm again. Now then, she said brightly, are you ready to get married? I believe I have an important job to do. She offered me her arm. As we walked toward the doors leading into the main ceremony space, I heard frantic whispers behind us. Did you know any of this? She works with the White House. That's really the governor. Just before we reached the doors, my father called out. Wait. I turned. For the first time in 5 years, his eyes weren't filled with disappointment or judgment, but regret. I had no idea, he said quietly. I know, I replied. I tried to tell you. You just didn't want to hear about my little social work job. The music swelled. The doors opened. Every guest turned as Governor Margaret Hale escorted me down the aisle. Whispers followed us like a wave. Is that really her? She advises the president. When we reached the altar, the governor hugged me once more and whispered, never let anyone make you feel small for choosing purpose. As she took her seat beside my parents, I saw them staring straight ahead, silent, stunned, and finally beginning to understand. The ceremony itself felt almost dreamlike. As Noah and I stood at the altar, sunlight streamed through the tall windows of the community center, catching the dust in the air and turning it into something soft and golden. I could feel my family watching me, not with embarrassment this time, but with confusion and awe, as if they were trying to reconcile two versions of the same person. When Noah spoke his vows, his voice was steady. I promise to support your work, he said, looking directly at me, even when it means late nights, difficult cases, and people who don't understand why you do what you do. My throat tightened. When it was my turn, I took a breath. I promise to build our life around compassion, I said, around service, and around the belief that helping others is never wasted effort. We kissed, and the room erupted into applause. From the front row, I caught sight of my father clapping, tears shining in his eyes. My mother smiled, though it looked tentative, like she was still absorbing everything she'd learned. Ethan and Natalie leaned toward each other, whispering urgently, probably replaying the past 5 years in their minds. The reception was held in the same space, transformed with string lights and long tables filled with food from a local family-owned restaurant. It wasn't extravagant, but it was warm. Governor Margaret Hale stood and raised her glass of sparkling cider. I've worked with many dedicated public servants, she said, her voice carrying easily. But few have Emily's rare combination of expertise, courage, and compassion. Her work has saved hundreds of lives and changed the future of this state. The applause was louder this time. My family clapped too, slower, more deliberate. I could see the weight of realization settling on them. After the governor left with her security detail, my family approached our table. My father sat down heavily beside me. I owe you an apology, he said. Several, actually. So do I, my mother added quietly. We thought you were throwing your life away, Natalie admitted. We didn't realize you were building something bigger than all of us. I met their eyes calmly. You stopped listening, I said gently. That's why you didn't know. Ethan rubbed his face. Why didn't you tell us about the promotion? About the White House? When would I have? I asked softly. You stopped inviting me. You stopped answering my calls. The truth landed like a physical blow. Silence followed, but this time, it wasn't hostile. It was honest. And for the first time in years, it felt like we were finally in the same room again. The rest of the evening passed more slowly, softer than the shock that had come before. Guests began to leave one by one, hugging us, whispering congratulations, still amazed by what they had witnessed. But my family stayed behind. For the first time in 5 years, no one seemed eager to walk away. My mother broke the silence first. "Emily," she said hesitantly, would you have dinner with us next week?" "Really have dinner?" "Where we listen this time?" I studied her face, searching for judgment and finding none, only uncertainty and hope. "I'd like that," I said. My father nodded slowly. "And maybe," he added, almost carefully, "you could show us your programs. Help us understand what you've built." A small smile spread across my face. "I'd love to." As Noah and I began packing up the remaining decorations, folding tablecloths borrowed from the community center, and stacking chairs, I felt something I hadn't expected. "Peace." "So," Noah said lightly, carefully folding her linen. "How does it feel to have the governor walk you down the aisle?" I laughed. "Surreal." He grinned. "Your dad complained about the venue for a solid 30 minutes. Which makes it perfect," I replied. He needed to learn that the most important things in life don't always look impressive. Before leaving, my father paused and looked around the room. The children's artwork on the walls. The scuffed floors. The folding chairs. "You chose this place on purpose," he said quietly. I nodded. 5 years ago, this community center ran an after-school program. I volunteered here on weekends while working at the residential facility. Some of my first success stories started right here. He swallowed hard. "This isn't a cheap venue," he said. "This is your life's work." "It's where I fell in love with the work," I corrected gently. "Success isn't about how big your office is. It's about how many lives you change." Later, as Noah and I locked the doors and turned off the lights, I thought about the journey that brought me here. 5 years ago, I was a young graduate with a calling and a family who thought I was failing. Now, I was married to a man who believed in my purpose, respected in my field, and finally, understood by the people who raised me. My family had needed to see success on my terms before they could respect it. And I had needed to learn that my worth never depended on their approval. As we stepped into the night, I realized something beautiful had begun, not just a marriage, but a new kind of family. One built on respect instead of expectations, and understanding instead of judgment. It had taken 5 years, a governor's arrival, and a wedding in a community center to get us here. But it was exactly where we were meant to be.